And welcome. This is our Afterthought segment that's only viewed on our website, where we keep our guests around for some extended conversation and hopefully candid conversation. With us today are Yellow Brink from Bangor Savings Bank, Karen Bragdon, the Maine Heritage Policy Center, Merritt Carey with representing Maine Businesses for Social Responsibility, and Jim Demesis from Policy One Research. We had a rapid-fire roundtable segment where we covered lots of issues, but we wanted to expand on some of them, and in particular, we wanted to spend some time talking about, just in general, the recovery and the recession in Maine. Are we seeing green shoots here now, or is this kind of just the lull before the next storm? Is this we're coming onto the second part of the W-shaped recession? So I guess I want to just throw that out. One of the things we were talking about during the break was the housing issue, and using that as a jumping-off point. Maine home sales climbed 12% year over year, I guess, for July. I think it's July date, or maybe it was June, I'm not sure. But still, obviously, a significant climb over last year. Prices are still down, however. So is this the bottom, and what does that represent? Are we on the mend? Where do we go? Go ahead.
A long way to go. When you look over the last year and a half, we've lost 22,000 jobs in the private sector. You look at just our demographics, we have some significant challenges coming up as far as how we can get back as a state to recreate those jobs. 22,000 jobs in 18 months. That's a big number.
Right, right.
I agree with Taryn. I think Maine tends to lag the national economy by roughly a year. We don't have Fortune 500 companies based here, so the first massive waves of layoffs don't hit us. But we have a lot of the small companies that are the suppliers of the big companies that have been hit hard the last year. So it ripples through. So I think when you think we're a year behind usually the national economy, and then that next year from the bottom up, that long, hard climb back feels just as bad as the last year on the way down. So we think in our business, even though we're strong, like any business, you've got a couple of rough years ahead, even if you're in good shape, that we're all going to have to weather. And it's not going to feel good even when we do hit bottom. It's still going to be a long slog.
The key indicators that we should watch, that you watch, are employment numbers, because employment drives consumers, which drives the economy. Is that what you're looking at? And
well, I think the key indicator I watch is common sense. In other words, I think
how do we measure that? I've been looking for that one.
Seriously, I think you have to step back from any given economic report of the day, which might be noise.
What we're going to see ahead, I think, in terms of state and local government services and budgets, the next year is going to be harder than the last year. Yeah. I think it was, it's never an easy budget year in state and local government. However, last year we've seen some one-time fixes. We've seen some of the surpluses drained to keep taxes steady, and we've seen some of the stimulus money be used to support services. That's not going to be readily available next year. So some of the real tough choices are going to be need to be made, and some of the real tough cuts.
Yeah, FY 210 state budget. I mean, the first time ever that it's actually been less than the year the budget before. I mean, there's an indicator for you. It's like, whoa, pay attention.
Yep. I think as long as unemployment is where it's at and dipping, I don't think we're going to see any significant boost in the economy. The housing numbers are optimistic, but I think they're also perhaps somewhat seasonal.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the commercial real estate piece? Do you have any feel about that? Because I always think of that as kind of the second shoe to drop. The housing piece is maybe coming out and stabilizing, but the commercial, is there going to be a lot of empty space? And then what happens to those mortgages?
No, I think it just for all of us driving around and looking, whether it's in downtowns or strip malls, we see more and more vacant storefronts. And it's not that any of those storefronts are getting filled. We're just seeing more and more vacancy. So I think you're absolutely right that is another shoe to drop that will take a few months. But after what's been a very tough summer, I think we're going to see our tourism and hospitality industry pretty hard hit this fall. And a lot of those people, businesses that rely on tours, who just didn't see the sales that they needed this summer.
Gosh, Jim, tell me something good. There's got to be something good here. This is bringing us down.
Well, I do think it goes back to, it's good to see a number jump here and there, but going back to what Yellow said, I think you start to feel better when it's small increases over a long period of time.
I think there are a few positives in this. I mean, even though we may not be seeing a rebound, I think a lot of the cuts in a lot of industries nationally were deep, right out of the gate, and so they're kind of at rock bottom and waiting to see when things are going to turn around. But two things. First, Maine is not nearly as bad off as many regions of the country. We did not have the degree of real estate speculation that the Southeast and the Southwest had. We have a fairly diversified economy. We have a lot of small and mid-sized businesses. Even in banking, where the national scene is dominated by a real handful of players and what happens to them on the global markets, Maine is dominated by local banks and local credit unions. 70% of Maine is local banks and local credit unions. So there's a lot of things that we have that have helped to buffer us a little bit. I think the second thing that's really long-term is, even though we keep saying it's really bad that people aren't rushing out and spending to restart the economy, in the long run, restoring that savings rate is really, really critical to personal, financial, household management, and also to our economy in the long run, that we have some domestic savings, not just savings from China or Europe that's getting invested here. Those things, are big picture long term. It's hard to feel good about them when you're worried about whether you're going to be laid off on Monday, and how you're going to take care of your family. But we're not as bad off as a lot of places, and so we have to recognize that as well.
Okay. I guess I did want to ask one more on just in general about the stimulus piece. Is there any benefit in having more stimulus at the federal level? Is there the stimulus 2? Should that be something that we should be interested in, we should support? Is that good for Maine or not?
I think that given Maine tends to lag a year behind, I think we may be wanting that stimulus money despite differing opinions on that. I don't think it's a call that can be made right now, but if our unemployment is still doing what it is and our residents are still hurting the way they are in a year from now, I think we might be looking at more potentially.
Okay. I'm going to jump in and bring us to, let's talk some politics for a while, because that's actually, as was mentioned earlier, it all gets down to that too, managing the budgets, looking what's coming forward, setting policy going forward, coming into election year. First of all, have any of you announced for governor yet? I think you're the last. You're the last four, but you can do it here on the show, right? We have a broad group of people that are seeking an open seat. That's a good thing. There's clearly going to be a lot of competition for that and a lot of discussion. And I think it's going to be driven by economics. It seems to me, usually is. Sometimes social issues get in there as well. But what are going to be the big economic issues? What are going to be the drivers that?
I think it's a really tough job for people to want. When you look at the next governor,
are you crazy?
He or she is going to do some really unpopular things.
Yeah.
We have some tough choices to make as a state. Do we want to really chart a future that's significantly different than our present, or do we want to just try to manage what's been a stagnant economy for a long time and an aging population and a growing dependent population? So I think it's a lot of really tough choices, and I think that what I hope to see is candidates who are honest and candid with the voter to begin to prepare them for these tough conversations that we need to have with public policy officials.
I think with the tough choices that these candidates are going to need to make and the ultimate governors are going to need to make, I think there's also room for innovation. I think it would be exciting to see Maine take these challenges and try and turn it on its head and create some innovation. I also think labor is going to be a huge issue. We have this significantly older population in Maine. We're the oldest and the whitest state right now. It's really hard to think about these issues when unemployment keeps rising, but we are going to face a significant workforce shortage in the coming years.
We're going to need affordable workforce. I mean, yeah, exactly. Okay, others, give some advice to these candidates.
I think one of the areas to be careful about is, I think we've made progress in this state in terms of being not taking as quickly going to tax increases as some of the other states went to in terms of this last recession, in terms of trying to solve the problems. So I think it's helped us move towards the middle where we want to be, essentially. The question is can that be sustained? Will the next governor toe the line again?
Yeah, you get the last word.
Well, I think this is a tough campaign, and we need our candidates to grapple with the enormity of the challenge, but I think we also look to them to be reassuring that we can make sense of this, that we can have kind of an optimistic vision for the future. I think once the next governor takes office, the economy is going to be starting to turn, and they're actually going to have the advantage of some goodwill and some resources to invest, whether it's investing in infrastructure or in tax cuts or what have you, that's generated from a turnaround.
Yeah.
The number one issue that I'm concerned that they're not talking about economically yet as much as I'd like is education. One of the few things that we can control relative to the global economy, relative to our competition, is the quality of our workforce, the investments we make in it, how nimble our training and education system is to respond to new businesses or sectors as they emerge, and having that core literacy. Maine is last in New England in young professionals with college degrees. There's no question about that.
Okay. Thanks. We're going to end it there. Appreciate you sticking around and doing this, and we're going to end the After Thoughts segment there. Thanks.